Today, Jen and I are diving into perimenopause and menopause with Sarah Bird, who is a family nurse practitioner. We all know that social media has cracked open this conversation, finally giving women language for what they're feeling. But with all this visibility has also come fear, something that women dread, fear of the symptoms that may overwhelm them, fear that the phase marks a decline. Our guest today, Sarah Bird, offers a completely different perspective. She sees menopause as a powerful opportunity to realign, rebuild, and reconnect to your health in a deeper, more intentional way. Her approach blends functional medicine, mind-body awareness, and evidence-based lifestyle strategies to help women understand why they feel the way they do and what they can do about it. So we talk about instead of relying on hormones, because not everyone can take hormones as a silver bullet, she helps women uncover the root causes behind their symptoms. She teaches a set of core habits for midlife, practical, sustainable foundations that support hormonal health, metabolic health, emotional well-being, and resilience. Sarah's work goes beyond prescriptions and protocols. It empowers women to take ownership of their health with clarity and confidence. Not only is Sarah a family nurse practitioner, DMP, but she earned her doctorate in integrative health and healing from the University of Minnesota and completed a functional medicine certification through the Institute for Functional Medicine. Sarah's also a certified well-being coach through the Anthropedia Foundation and a national board certified health and wellness coach. Grounded in integrative root cause care, Sarah partners with her clients to create personalized wellness plans that may include functional diagnosis, nutrition, lifestyle strategies, and sleep and support and compassionate coaching. With special interests in women's health, hormone balance, and gut health, she takes a whole person approach, and we know you're going to love this conversation. So keep on listening.
Before we dive in, just a quick reminder. This episode is for educational purposes only and isn't medical advice. If you're dealing with a health issue, please check in with your healthcare provider.
Hello, welcome to the Nurse Coach Duo. My name is Angie McGuire, and I am the owner of Coach Angie in Oak Park, Illinois.
And hi, I'm Jen Schroer, owner of Clarity Health and Wellness. And today we have Dr. Sarah Bird with us today. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have this conversation with you. Of course, we already gave your intro, so I'm sure everyone's super excited to hear from you. Such a great background in education and bio. So as we were already talking before we started recording, social media has really brought perimenopause and menopause up into having a moment, if you will, right? It is everywhere. And what Angie and I tend to find is just how confused our clients are about what do I do, what is right, what is wrong, and people that are just petrified of going through this, either that they started going through this and they feel horrible and they're never going to feel better, or people who are premenopause and are like, oh my God, what do I have to do to not feel that way, right? And I kind of feel like I grew up that way. I kind of feared growing old in the same way that people now fear going through menopause, even though that wasn't something. And through the education of, lifestyle medicine and all that, now I'm like, hey, I'm going to grow old healthy, right? So just if I thought we'd start there and talk a little bit about, the fear that people are coming in and probably coming to see you as well, and how you reframe perimenopause in this phase of life more as an opportunity, and what that kind of changes for your clients.
Yes, thank you for that question. So I just want to first acknowledge what you said, that I do think all of the awareness is really important, and raising awareness is wonderful because for so many years, women didn't have information. And that was, or they were told, yeah, this is what's going on, but there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, people still unfortunately get that sometimes. Um, and I think that it's also important to acknowledge that it is scary. It is a scary time. You
Yeah.
start getting these symptoms, like universal symptoms, that can be very overwhelming. But I really see it as an opportunity because women so often are taking care of everybody else in their
Yeah.
lives. They are
Yes.
caregivers for their children, for their spouses. At work, maybe they have a role as a caregiver. Often people are taking care of aging parents at this age. It's a sandwich generation. Um, and I find that when they come to me and they are in perimenopause, they have to make themselves a priority and they have to get better at self-care. Um, and so it can be really an opportunity for us to partner and to look back on what she's been doing. What have you been doing that's working for you and what's not working for you? What do you want to change? Um, because if they don't make themselves a priority and their health a priority during perimenopause, they will crash and burn.
Yeah.
You will not do well. But if we can calm them down, because that's the other piece. If we come at it from a place of fear, we aren't going to make good decisions. We have sort of three aspects of our brain from an evolutionary perspective. You have that reptilian brain, which is the amygdala, that is really the center of that fight or flight response. Then you have the mammalian brain, which is about oxytocin and sort of all those touchy feel good feelings. And then you have the human part, which is the prefrontal cortex. And when we are in that fight or flight response, we are making decisions as a reaction, right? It's that I'm afraid I need to just fix this. But if we can calm people down, get the prefrontal cortex online, we can help them make decisions that are rational and, creative. Because I find in perimenopause, we have to be creative.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, when we think about functional medicine, I think functional medicine is creative, right? And there's you want to get to that root cause, and that has to be creative because everyone's so different, right? And you have to
Yes.
evaluate all sorts of things. I mean, coming from,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
yeah,
never with perimenopause, it's never one size fits all. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time. When we start, I always tell people this is not going to be like I give you the medication and you're done. It's going to be a process. You're going to feel great one month, and then next month you're going to feel like you're pregnant. And like we have to work together to manage that as like a total disclaimer at the beginning.
right. I mean, it takes time too, and a
Yeah.
commitment from your patients and that understanding. I love that. I think it's so important to be upfront about that and know that, they're coming to you, but they also have to be a part of the equation, right? Or the part of the goal. And um, if they want to feel better and get to the root cause.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And, we talk about um, functional medicine. We always say that HRT is not the silver bullet. When somebody comes to me, I am automatically going to see where they are. And if they need hormone replacement, I'm going to start because if we get to the point that they're having hot flashes, I think we've probably waited too long. And that's one of the things that I think people don't realize. They're like, oh, well, when I start having hot flashes, I'll go in and get my HRT. But it's really like there's a lot earlier that we can intervene, but that's not just hormones. So if we only treat with hormones, we're really going to miss a big part of the story because there's so much going on. If we're not looking at the terrain of the body, it's going to be so much harder and we're not going to succeed because hormones are very labile during this period. So, up and down and up and down. And that's even worse if somebody has an unhealthy gut, if somebody's very stressed, if somebody has a lot of inflammation, it's going to be much harder and they're just not going to feel as well. So, we think about, I think the biggest thing that people struggle with during this period is those cortisol ups and downs, and the way that affects sleep, the way that affects mood, and just how they feel in their bodies. The thing is that cortisol and sex hormones are made from the same precursors. So I think people are familiar with the term cortisol. Is that pretty
Yes.
like stress hormone? Okay, we know all about this, right?
Yeah.
But they're all made from the same bucket. So you can think about it like a bucket of Legos. Like you have a certain amount of those Legos that you're going to use to make cortisol and to make sex hormones. And from an evolutionary perspective, I know I keep talking about evolution, but from an evolutionary perspective, our body is always going to prioritize cortisol. Because if you think about it, back in the caveman days, you're in the woods running away from like a woolly mammoth, and it's much more important that you survive than you make a baby at that moment, right? So you can make a baby later. You have to survive right now. And that still persists today, that cortisol steal, is how we talk about it. But our biology hasn't caught up with our culture. Our culture, we're not running away from a woolly mammoth every day. But when we see things online about, a climate change catastrophe across the world, or, political unrest, or even just, being in traffic or having a complicated conversation, with a boss or with a spouse, our body can perceive those things as a mortal threat. And so, if we haven't figured out how to calm the body, we're going to have a lot harder time getting somebody through menopause, perimenopause, and menopause, in a way that really helps them succeed and feel good. So that's a lot of what we work on, and also getting their guts in good shape because you metabolize all of your hormones through your gut. So if I'm giving you some extra, I want to make sure you're clearing that out well. Um, and just inflammation in general affects all this, right? Because inflammation increases blood sugar, which increases cortisol, and it's like a feed forward cycle. So, yes, hormones so important. I love them. One of my favorite tools in the toolbox, but not the whole story.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, how do you manage that conversation with women when they come in, they want their hormones, and that's what we're seeing a lot of, right? People are just, that's the only thing they want. And they don't maybe understand how much of a lifestyle modifications they need to make. And we definitely, Angie and I have done a lot of episodes about stress management because we recognize that that's like pretty much where you got to start, right?
Yeah.
But how do you manage that conversation to help them understand where you were saying you might feel good this month, you might feel bad next month, to where, because I think people, we want instant gratification, right? We
Yeah.
want instant feeling better. We're used to going to a doctor, getting a pill or a patch or a whatever, and going home and, oh, look at me, I feel better, or taking an Advil, whatever, and I
Yeah.
feel better. We don't look at, oh, this pill, this, I'm on this and I don't feel good, but it's working. Like, how do we correlate that? So kind of how do you work through
Yes.
that with women?
Totally. Well, in my private practice as a coach, and then also, in my work at Palm, I generally have a meet and greet with people. And I always start out by saying, I see this as a collaboration. I believe in body autonomy. So if you want to do hormones, good. If you don't want to do hormones, that's fine too. But I want you to be aware and, be educated about it. But this is not me telling you what to do or just giving you a solution. This is a collaboration between the two of us. Um, and your goals are my goals.
Mm,
So, I'm going to guide you as sort of an expert in the field, but I'm not going to tell you, X, Y, or Z. So I always start with that. I really listen to what they want and what they need, but I also think we have to meet patients where they are. So, if they are not wanting to, start with exercise, I go through kind of we talk about everything,
yeah.
we talk about every system of the body because it's not just about the reproductive system. We know this. We talk about stress, we talk about sleep, we talk about nutrition, we talk about meaning and purpose. That is a really important part of my practice. Um, and most people, even if they don't want to make changes, they recognize that they should, or I shouldn't say they don't want to. They want to, but they are struggling to do so. As a coach, I'm sure you guys deal
Yes.
with this all the time. And I have an amazing team of coaches that I work with, which are invaluable to me. But I also am not going to be like, well, you have to do X, Y, and Z. So we always try to start with something small because, perimenopause is overwhelming.
Very.
It's very overwhelming. So I don't try to give them 20 or 30 or 40 things to do. The other thing that I think is really important, and starting with something small. So, like, you want to work on, okay, we have nutrition. I see these potential areas of opportunity for you, right?
Right.
It's not like this is what's wrong. I just see like, I think you're doing great with your sleep. Awesome. Like you're prioritizing it, you're using good sleep hygiene, but like you have some like in the area of exercise, you have some opportunity to work on longevity and get yourself feeling better. Um, and they are, a mother of three and da da da, da, and they work a full-time job. They don't have time. So we'll just start with like 15-minute walk on a Saturday. It may be as simple as that.
Right.
Because if you pick one small thing and you can be successful, you're much more likely to make other changes. And in a lot of the habit changing and sustainable change data, we know this to be true that like you're much more successful doing one small thing than trying to overhaul everything. So by meeting them where they are, listening, because a lot of times people just don't have somebody that's listening to them about their health. It's wild.
Wild.
Um, and and then helping them understand that I'm there for them and I'm a partner for them and I'm not there to judge them. You know, so many people initially come in and they're like, "Oh, well, you're going to be so mad at me." And I'm like, "No, really, I'm not." Um, so not, not coming from a non-judgmental place, I think really is an important piece. And just working on small little things. Calming the
Yeah.
body, if I was going to pick one thing to start with from a lifestyle perspective to your point about stress, I would say calming the body is what I really like to start with if they're willing. But it is the hardest thing for people to do because they have to be alone and quiet and be with themselves. And we've gotten so addicted to stimulation that,
Mhm.
um, people, I have found people will exercise, people will change their diet, people will fix their sleep, but calming down their bodies, um, building in practices to do that is somehow one of the hardest things.
Yeah, we see that. That's why we've been committed to trying to talk about it more and giving people different options to try,
Yeah, and like
try to do that.
At Palm, I'm very lucky because we sort of have these integrative therapies that are a bit of
Mhm.
a biohack. I hate
Mhm.
that word because it's so like bro, but like we have these therapies like cryosauna and salt room and biomat, which is an infrared mat or a positive electromagnetic frequency mat. And those things make it very easy because you don't have to do anything. Um, so that can be an entree for my patients to, because I think just going straight into meditation in this day and age is very intimidating. People don't know how to sit with themselves. But if you can use an integrate, like even something like legs up the wall. So if somebody, outside of Palm or outside of Origin, other place where we have a lot of these integrative therapies, um, I'll just say legs up the wall, belly breathing. There's a lot of really small things, and I don't give them five things. I give them one.
Mhm.
So, that is a way, one thing I've found to try to help people calm things down, but it's one of the biggest challenges for individuals.
I'm so glad that you give some small, practical
Yeah.
ways to do it. Because we all have different access to things, right? But we
Yeah.
do need to build it into our day, right? Even if it's just small moments. But like you said, it's one of the most difficult things to do
Yeah. And sometimes,
consistently.
yeah, and sometimes I'll just start with 5 minutes before bed because it's like a very clear, they talk about habit stacking where you like add a habit on to something you're already doing every day. So, for something like osteoporosis, every time you brush your teeth, you jump 20 times because it helps with bone health. So I'll try to help people habit stack before bed. So legs up the wall for 10 minutes before bed, or belly breathing for 5 minutes before bed, or stretching. Stretching is so easy. And, the fascia is like such an important relaxation organ of the body. So that is another way by just tagging it on to something that they're already doing, particularly at bed, because for some reason it's easier for people to take care of themselves before bed.
Yeah, there's a like a routine, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, or something that people get into. Um, no, I so appreciate that you talk about doing one thing at a time. I don't know why we think as women we have to just go all in and conquer everything in one day. And I think that's one of the most important things we all can do as coaches is to remind people that, it's, as cliche as it sounds, but it's really one step at a time, right? Picking
really
one
is.
thing and starting from there, it's just really interesting to think about. I know you've already alluded to some of these core habits that you talk to your clients about. Is there anything else that you want to add about these core habits that you sort of part of your strategy working with women in midlife?
Yeah, so thank you. Um, you guys know also that I'm also trained as a coach. So that's such a big part of my practice because I feel using that strategy is really helps people be successful. And that's kind of where I started thinking about these habits, core habits to help people live well. The first is something we already talked about, which is awareness and education. So, do you have the information that you need? And do you have the data, like all the data, to allow you to make an educated decision? Because for so many years, women didn't have that information. Um, then kind of the big three lifestyle things, aside from stress management, which is really important, but exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And with exercise, it's just so important. We know, you've heard again and again and again, all three of these things. Um, More and more data about how important these things are for living well, feeling well, and having a good health span, versus lifespan. With exercise, I really try to focus on strength training because we know that muscle is a protective organ, and it's really important for women with bone health, heart health, brain health. There was one study, I don't know if you guys saw this, where they correlated the mass of women's leg muscles with a decreased risk in Alzheimer's disease. And that just, I thought that was such an amazing, it's a correlation, but, I think it really speaks to the benefit of muscle mass and strength training. But I recommend a combination of resistance training and HIIT, high intensity interval training, but only like once or twice a week, not a lot of that hardcore cardio. Um, and I think people are getting this message, but long sustained cardio and perimenopause is gonna fight against you. It's gonna fight against you because you are going to definitely spike up that cortisol, and without the support of the sex hormones, it's much harder to rebalance that. One thing, I do have some marathoners as patients, and my sister, and we talk a lot. I talk about calming the body down. If you go on a 10-mile run, don't like jump in the shower and run and take your kids to school and then eat 2 hours later or 3 hours later. Because when you're running, you will spike that cortisol. That's natural. That you can't avoid it. But if you come home and you eat some carbs and some protein, food, just eat food, and you sit down and you put your legs up the wall, the body's going to calm down. If you run out the door, take your kids to school, da, 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 the whole catastrophe, you're telling the body like we still need to run away from the woolly mammoth. We haven't even gotten any food yet. So we have to keep going. And then you're not going to sleep well that night. So it's not that I want to take these things away from people. We have to just be creative If you want to run a marathon, okay, but let's make sure that you're prioritizing your nutrition and your body calming and so that you're not, crapping out. Um, because those people do not usually, if they're not setting themselves up well, they're not going to have good runs and just their body's going to suffer. So exercise is one. Another one, nutrition, we've all heard about the protein, but unfortunately it is important. But I try to also help people find creative ways to get that in. And I don't like get crazy, like, oh my God, you have to have 140 grams. Like, let's think about it. Let's eat whole foods, a lot of fiber for the microbiome, and a lot of vegetables. Like, let's not overcomplicate it. And then sleep. Sleep is so important because um, it's just when our body restores. It's when our body detoxifies. That those first few hours of the night when you're in deep sleep is when you have that cerebrospinal fluid that is taking out those junk proteins and really decreasing your risk of developing cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, dementia. And so it's really a wonderful moment to take care of yourself. And it's one of the first things I think that goes in perimenopause. So people start sleeping poorly. To me, that's like, okay, we need to look at your hormones like yesterday, because that's often the thing that goes first. We talked a lot about calming the body, so that's a big one. Um, and then assessing relationships. This is sometimes a sticky wicket to talk to patients about. But this isn't just about, your spouse or your family. It's also about your community and having strong relationships outside of that nuclear family. There was that longitudinal study done from Harvard that showed that the quality of relationships is the biggest predictor of happiness later in life, and health and well-being. And so thinking about your community, and if you don't have relationships outside of your nuclear family, I mean, so many women are just trying to, keep it together, but it's a really important source of resilience for many people is their communities. So thinking about relationships, and when we have that conversation, then maybe the need comes up to talk about counseling. And if not, then maybe coaching. They're definitely two different things. And depending on whether they're wanting to work on habit change or sort of thinking more about change in the future, I usually steer them to coaching. If they are struggling with relationships, then we tend to move towards counseling. And thankfully, I have some people that I really trust. So, and then the last thing is really about kind of meaning and purpose, which I've talked about earlier, but I have women do a very practical a very practical exercise where they will record for a few days or a week how they're spending their time. They just write down like, okay, exercise or, you know, took my kids to school or, spent an hour on Instagram, whatever the case. And then I also have them separately write down like, what are the things that you value? And I have them at the end of that period kind of look at those things and see how are those things aligned? Are they aligned? Are you spending your time in the way that you value? And if you're not, and do you have something that you value actually? Like I think a lot of women struggle with meaning and purpose at this period also because they're empty nesting and or they're questioning their relationship or whatever the case, or they're unhappy in their work. That's a big one too. And so it's, the way that you're spending 80 to 90% of your time is that giving you deeper meaning and purpose. Because if it's not, it will start to affect your health.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that overview. I gotta say, whenever, Angie knows how much I love tracking. So once you start talking about tracking, I'm like, yes, because I do think that there's so much of this, and whether it's any of the core habits that you're talking about, whenever you're talking about like meeting people where they are, it really is about awareness. And we spend so much time running through days that we're not even aware of what are our values, what are we doing with our habits. And when you call kind of this time as, an opportunity, I think that's like the perfect thing. And I've also heard people call it the pause, right? The
Yeah.
taking the pause. It's the
Yeah.
opportunity to take a pause, take stock of your life, and an opportunity to change your mindset about these core habits. I know for me, as I've gone through this,
Yeah.
I went through the I don't care stuff and all of that. But I found that I really wanted to care, so that was a big thing for me. But also I found a time to be able to change my mindset on when I go to the gym. I'm going to the gym to work on my bones, to be healthy. I eat to nourish my body. I do stress management to feel better so that I can do the things I want. It really is a mindset. It's such an opportunity to pause, look at how you're living your life and saying, is this how I want to live my life?
Yeah.
With or without hormones, we've
Yes,
got to do that, right? And I
absolutely.
think that that is just something that Angie and I try to like really stress in these because we believe in all those core habits that you mentioned, that they really are at the core, literally, and it is on both sides of hormones, before starting, after starting, if you never start,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Or if you
really
never.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
That
Thank you. Thank you. And I think, unfortunately, I mean, I feel very lucky and very blessed because I have time, and we don't have to go into the whole issue of our messed up medical system,
Oh,
but I have the gift of time with people. And that's what coaches have too. That's what coaches
yes.
have. And that's why I think it can be very powerful for patients.
That's part of what Angie and I love about it too, because we really do get to spend that time with clients and look at more than just, the surface. We really dig into things and all the things you said, meet people where they are, work on one thing at a time, like forget this plan that is do exactly this. It's like, no, the reason everybody is looking for a plan is because their last plan didn't work. Like
Yes.
these plans don't work. Just pick what
Yes.
works for you and start
Yes.
doing it. Yeah. So. Well, this has been amazing and a great talk. So I want to be cognizant of our time together. Can you tell everyone where to find you? I want to make sure that they start following you because you've put some really great content out there.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's at Sarahbird DNP on Instagram, on YouTube. My YouTube is very, very brand new. And Facebook, Sarahbird DNP. And yes, I really appreciate being here. I appreciate this conversation. I love what you guys are doing and what you're talking about. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a great conversation, and I appreciate you saying that because yeah, Angie and I are really just trying to get as much information out as we can. So,
To
audience,
your
if
point,
you
it's about awareness, right? We
Yeah,
just
yes.
help
100%.
100%, yes.
with
So
that.
if you like this episode, please make sure that you add a like, a comment, subscribe. We'd love to hear more from you. If any of the three of us can be of any help to you, we will have our information in the comments. So please look at there.
Thank